The mics are all on. You have to get up to them, so you don't have to mess with buttons or anything, as I understand it.
It's on all the time, but if you mutes it temporarily. Let go.
Hit the button, it will mute it temporarily. Otherwise, they're on, right?
Yeah.
Finish
I
your
did
roll.
not finish the roll call. Jim King is present. Aaron Chase, absent. Greg Stewart, absent. Betty Harris Howard. Amy Wolf, here. Brett McCarthy. And Andy Weiss is not.
First action tonight is acceptance of the minutes, and as I understand, the March minutes were already approved. So we're looking at the May 8th and May 22nd minutes. You all should have them someplace. When you're ready, I'll entertain a motion to accept the May 8th minutes.
Didn't have.
Motion. For a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Jim, you in favor? Jim, are you in favor? Okay, next we'll move on to the minutes for May 22nd.
A motion to accept the minutes from May
Okay.
22nd.
Do I hear a sec- hear a second? All in favor? Opposed? Okay. Next item on the agenda was going to be a pre-application review for 23 Harold Howell Way, map 14, lot 15, owners Nancy and Chris Vanderdale. And that has been withdrawn temporarily, and we'll not be covering that tonight. Moving down to item 5. Zoning map. And that's currently up on the overhead. And go ahead.
I just want to make an observation. I'm not sure what's showing on Zoom. So I want to make everyone aware that
Want me to help you share it? I could do that.
Jim, you on Zoom?
Like you're sharing. You want me to show you how to share it?
please.
Jeff,
There's
there's
a-
a map.
Your screen share.
I know. In previous meeting, we said we would leave that on there for several weeks. Any action for consideration tonight is to review that. And if you so desire, go ahead and move to okay it, and then it'll move on to the council for acceptance.
That is someone Zoom? Is that or is that?
I think it was her, but I think.
Is me you getting feedback on? Stopped, okay.
I apologize in advance.
Motion's in order, us to accept it, is that correct?
Motion, you want to consider motion to move this to the council for their adoption. We didn't have a public hearing because there are really no changes, no public came forward and made comment on it, had concerns. Yes, if you could move it to the council for consideration, once they adopt it, you'll need to sign it, the town clerk will certify it, and then it'll be.
All right, let's make a motion to send this to the town council.
Making a motion?
That's my motion.
We'll second that motion.
We have a motion, a second. We'll move it on to the council. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed?
I think it's
Surprise.
Me repeating every rubric. Jim, are you still there?
Yeah, sort of. I can't hear anybody except you.
Okay, but you got to learn to step up to the mic. We'll do better, Jim. Are you in favor of moving this on to the council?
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. It looks like our next item is a review of our ongoing workshop on the zoning ordinance. And we have the pleasure of Ed with us tonight. He worked very hard with Dawn. Put it together and get the pieces modified. And so I assume, Dawn, you'll walk us through it? Absolutely, please.
Discuss this. I can walk you through it. I didn't know if Ed wanted to take an opportunity to do that. Whatever the pleasure of the board is.
And so we're looking at this document. We're talking about the zoning ordinance for the municipality of Winthrop.
Did you have an expectation that you would present this? Do you want me to review it? How would you like to handle it?
I could, if you wish, I know you, yeah, we got a screen up there. Very nice. This is all great stuff here.
Back of your head was on.
I'm not coming back.
I was gonna say.
Oh, shucks, Ed.
But if, if you want to go ahead, if you feel comfortable walking through it, I'll let you go ahead. I'll certainly chime in with anything I have that, might add to it or, or possibly background information as appropriate, since a lot of this work actually does go back a year and a half, 2 years or so. But go ahead.
So as we proceed, Dawn will go through the pages with us and review what the changes are, basically. And if you have a question, please stop and ask your question or give your input. This is a workshop and it's intended to get the board's input so we can keep moving toward a final revision of this document. Thank you. Dawn?
So ideally, moving forward, I would like to share the Word document so people could see via Zoom what you're looking at.
Jim, can you hear Dawn? Can you hear Jim?
Muted.
Jim?
Okay, sorry, I had my phone on mute. No, I cannot hear her. I can't. The only person I can hear is you.
Just because I'm sitting on the mic. So Dawn's gonna have to get close to the mic.
Is it-
Hold on. Oh, I see it.
Oh.
Yeah, it's hung out.
Okay, can everyone hear me better?
Yes, ask me if you can hear you.
Jim, can you hear me better?
A little bit.
Gotta be right on it.
Like right here. How about now?
Yeah, that's good.
Seems very close. Okay, now I know.
Can't read anything while you talk that way.
So in the future, what I would like to do is to share, when you do these text changes, is to share it on the screen so people at home can see it. It is, will be online, but at this point, we're just going to go through page by page, and I'll describe it. And the ordinances online as well. So on page 2, under zoning districts, Article 310, line C and D, removal of the word shoreland and leave it as zoning map. It is the official zoning map and it has shoreland elements in it. And then this is part of the reorganization. So the reorganization where it was Article 4, performance standards, and it's between 12, 13, and 14. Some things were moved around because they were more appropriate to be under a certain location. Some things were merged. There was a duplication that was eliminated. So on 13, H through T were moved from 14. So they were in the development of shore areas and they apply more broadly. So they have been moved to specific activities, which is outside, can be outside of the shoreline as well as within. And you can see below that they've been struck from section 14. So that was just relocated.
You took the mineral exploration out, and that's a separate one.
Took that out and referenced the separate ordinance. And then on the next page, you can see that erosion sediment control, soils and archaeological sites, those have been relocated or merged. So the same thing there. That's just, this is not an amendment that has substance, it's organizational. It'll make the ordinance more user-friendly and apply more appropriately. And on page 5, at whatever point that the ordinance is amended, the date will need to be inserted there. So we should skip over 7. Do you want to talk about 7, page 7, the striking of structures within 25 feet, or do you want to talk about that now?
We certainly can.
This would be a change, this on page 7.
On page 7, on the expansion of the non-conforming structures. This language, for a historical perspective, a number of years ago, we did major revision based on the DEP's shoreland zoning updates, chapter 1, title 1000, whatever. I forget exactly the citation on that one. But we did take a lot of language verbatim from the state. Now, a comment on that is the state language, the state ordinances, rules are the minimum. We cannot be less restrictive than them. I mean, we could, but it wouldn't apply. However, they are the baseline. We can be somewhat more restrictive if we wish. Now, the language on the non-conforming structures relating this is C 1 A, B, and C, expansion of, well, A is expansion of accessory structures, basically it's prohibited. B, expansion of any portion of a structure within 25 feet of a normal high water line is prohibited. But on a on a structure that basically straddles the 25-foot line, expansion can take place uh, uh, beyond the 25. The state had this sort of caveat that, which was item C, where if the entire structure is within 25 feet of the water, that a 30% expansion would be allowed. I've kind of been looking at that, and to me, that is really, I think, really flies in the face of what we're trying to do to protect the lakes. Any structure that is entirely within 25 feet, my mind, should not be expanded at all. And so this is a proposed change that, of my suggestion, that we delete what was the state item 3, which allowed for that, and just flat out not allow any expansion of any type within the 25-foot setback. 25 feet from the water's edge. So I guess at this point, I personally am sort of throwing that out to the board's consideration. It's, obviously this was not discussed previously with the board, because we hadn't even really talked about this for at least a year, I believe it was. But this was something new, and I basically come across it as I'm reviewing this and saying, this really isn't meeting a straight face test. Maybe we just ought to get rid of it. So that's where that one is, and you say I'm fine with board decision on it. Just my opinion, I think that's one thing we should just prohibit. Even though the state does allow it, we don't have to follow state. The state is minimum. So in this case, this would be more restrictive.
I've just got a question. This is for expansion. What happens if you've got one that's totally within the 25 feet? And want to tear it down and rebuild it, brings down or something?
Okay. No,
Say
this
it comes-
does not refer to repair or rebuilding in the footprint. This language just
Just expansion.
pertains to expansion.
So in that case, they probably would be able to rebuild, but we would have the option of moving them back if possible.
Well, now that's a very good point, because that really is what is supposed to be done if there's a total rebuild, is burns down, something of that nature, is to try to get it back, move back to the greatest extent possible, become conforming, which would be the 100-foot line. And it would become, at that point, the board's judgment on whether that's going to be feasible or not. It certainly could allow rebuilding within the original footprint, but if we remove that, it would not allow expansion. So, and again,
I like that suggestion. Not letting them expand.
so anyway, I'm throwing that out for the board's consideration, and I don't get a vote on it.
Yeah, within 25 feet of the shoreline is
That's pretty
awfully close. So
And
shouldn't
that
be
is,
there anyway, so.
yeah. And that would be the total structure is within that 25 feet. So obviously it's got to be very close to the water. The closest point's got to be, literally on the water.
Yeah.
That is a case where I think it really kind of flies in the face of common sense there. And I never discussed this with Bill Monagle, but I think he'd be 100% on favor on that one.
We all set with 7?
I have just one more quick question, Mr. Chairman. So Ed, you've been doing this for 18 years or so.
19 years, 2 months.
19 years and 2 months. Do you recall any cases coming before the board for just this specific instance with a structure located entirely within the 25 feet?
No, I do not. I do not.
We're probably talking, my familiarity with the area is driving up and down Memorial Drive, so trying to picture some of those places that are close to the water, but probably not all within 20.
Right.
Off of, oh, what was it? It was next to the campground. It was on Kapasi Conti. It was like 10 feet from the water.
Yeah, that was the closest point, but it went back.
I
It
know.
went back quite a ways, yeah. Yeah, it was not entirely in the 25 zone. I don't recall ever encountering one, and I would venture to guess there would be precious few, if any, out there, short of being, a very small camp, you know. I think the impact of this would be, minimum, very few people might be affected, and I think, again, to me, common sense factor of not allowing any further expansion in there is hard to argue with.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, let's move on to the next page. It's appropriate.
Moving forward, some things are reorganization and some things would be actually a change to the ordinance, and this is one of the ones that would be a change.
Yeah, a lot of it was reorg, so. But go ahead, Don.
Next page.
Page 12. And it's referencing the zoning map, consistent with the table of contents, strikes the word shoreland in both references to the map.
Again, I think that was an artifact of when we adopted the state language, which was primarily dealing with shoreland, that somehow or other we got the shoreland zoning map language in there and never noticed that, it really applies to all of the maps, so, or all the zones.
So page 16. Striking, it's a reference to shoreland zone, but the change would be to call it the shore areas. Because the shoreland zone is a specific zone. We have more than one zone in the shoreland, so. Am I explaining that correctly?
Yes, I believe so. Again, I think that was in a, how do I want to say, a confusing use of the term, because this table applied to all of the zones related to shoreland resource protection, and including public water supply, which is some distance away from shoreland, but within that sort of that subgroup of areas. So rather than call it a shoreland zone, which if you look in the definitions is defined as anything within 250 feet, et cetera, which really doesn't adequately describe everything that's covered here. So I suggested that we go with shoreland areas as opposed to the shoreland zone. I think there's a couple of instances where we did that language change.
So,
Looking at the title is what you're talking about. You've crossed off land. Is the intent to say shoreland area? Or is it shore area?
Shore area.
So land comes off, zone comes off. Okay, thank you.
We actually used the shore areas elsewhere in the, in section 14, development and shore areas, which is, all of the specific activities related to these 4 zones. So I thought shore areas was probably a good term to use for this table as well.
Next. Was there input?
Do we need to provide a definition for shore areas somewhere in the definition section?
I don't think we have to. I was thinking about that. I mean, possibly could, if you wanted, put an area in that shore areas refer to resource protection, shoreline, et cetera, if you wanted to do that. I don't think it would be necessary particularly. I think it's going to be more or less self-explanatory.
Now, for what it's worth, up in abbreviations, S is shoreland. Should that be now shore area?
No, that,
Leave
yes,
it
the
alone?
shoreland is shoreland. That's the 250 from the water. That's separate from resource protection, separate from stream protection and public water. So yeah, I don't think those abbreviations would want to be changed. I think they're appropriate.
Shore areas.
This is Jim.
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I think my personal feeling is that if we're going to have something that is specific to shore area that is not necessarily specific to shoreland zone, then we need to have a definition so that people know what applies to what. Otherwise, there will be confusion.
I might agree with that. I questioned it at first. It made sense when it was explained. We could throw a definition in there for that.
Dawn?
Another option.
And, you know, is shore area going to be another zone that is specific from shoreland?
So I'll have Dawn note that and we'll come up with a definition for future review. Okay, Jim?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds good. I just like clarification. You know as well as I that when somebody reads through this, they're gonna nitpick every detail. And if we're not precise or if we're not very precise in our wording, somebody will use it as a loophole.
Thank you, Jim.
Future consideration is combining tables. It would become too cumbersome, or it's already been looked at, but that's something that we can look at. User friendly.
I think it's more user-friendly being separate personally. Then you've got like subsections and it.
Yeah, well, I know when we put this together initially, and also when I was looking at it with a comment of the term the shore areas and instead of the shoreline zone, that is that group of zoning districts that pertain to, the shore areas and the kind of the related zones as opposed to the other group of just general zones. So, but I do agree with Jim. It's not a bad idea. If there's anybody that feels they might be confused with the term, the shore areas, that throw a definition in and just say, this pertains to this group of zoning districts. And that's really a pretty simple one to define and should make it very clear if anyone might even reference to the table 1 list. Yeah. So.
Okay, next is the table 2, is that correct?
Correct. There's one proposed change. One proposed change, which is just adding the reference, the mineral extraction ordinance that you all just created, council under 18. So it doesn't change where it's allowed. It's only allowed in the rural district. Instead of having standards within this ordinance, those we have been struck and just for out.
Will you make like a little 2 and put that underneath? I did with medical marijuana.
We can do that.
Yeah, I was looking at that and I was wondering if for consistency that might be better footnoted or, but it's also pretty clear the way you've got it in there too, so.
Is there anything else that has a separate ordinance that we also would want to reference with that, like marijuana, like? Is anything else?
Solar farms.
Well, there are some items that I'm going to propose we add to the table, which includes towers, solar uses. So yes.
And
they're
then we
not
can all
necessarily-
put that number 2C separate ordinance.
That's a good point. If you've got other uses that you want to add to that table, particularly the solar and the tower that have the specific ordinances. You know, that's probably not a bad idea to make that approach. I had not thought of it. We really didn't look at that level when we were doing this work initially.
If no other input, we'll move on to table 3.
Page 18. The minimum lot areas or lot size was changed to make them consistent across the board. I apologize, I trying to regroup. So it changes the minimum lot area. Establish a new lot. It changes the setback, all but the general residential district. You want me to go by them zone by zone?
Do we need to review every item or everybody can, aware of it?
Need to get closer to the microphone.
Question I had was, relative to the table, is everybody okay with, what we have, or do we need to go through every box?
I'm not okay with a lot of it. We can expand on that if you want.
I misunderstood. Did you want to look at every box?
I mean,
Or you have a specific item you want to?
I have specific items.
Let's do that.
Okay.
Good.
Okay, so first off, the minimum lot size for resource protection, shoreland, stream protection, public water supply, I think you should be making those larger, so there's less of an impact on those areas. Especially when we're trying to talk about protecting, those specific areas. Everything else, village, I'm fine with, obviously. Rural, again, I think we should be keeping it to the 2 acres and not 1 acre. I know that they say there's a lot of work that they do with septic now, sticking it on 1 acre, but imagine multiple septics next to each other, 1 acre, 1 acre, 1 acre. People are selling off things, looking towards the future with developers. They're gonna come eventually. And I think that you have to protect this area or we're gonna lose it. And it's just gonna become residential someday. To me. The other thing I'm not a fan of is the 10-foot side and rear setbacks. I think maybe in some of the areas it makes a little bit better sense, but I don't want somebody's shed 10 feet from my property. I like that extra 10 feet away from me. And I wouldn't want to, I wouldn't plop something down next to my neighbor that close. Especially if you're in rural and you have 2 acres right there, minimum. Why do you gotta be 10 feet from your neighbor? That's all.
Any others?
On that, nope, fine with the road frontage and yeah.
I think that the reduction is in with the plan of the state where we're trying to make it more of land more available so that people can build houses because the housing is desperately needed. And I think that it's kind of going along with that. And I'm kind of I'm basically for it because I can't, really bothers me to think there's so many people that have no place to live because we won't give a little.
I will say to combat that, maybe in normal times, I would have said, yeah, all this cheap land and construction costs were cheap. I know somebody that just bought a pre-manufactured house on land and it's ridiculous how much it's costing for them to do it. So this isn't normal, or lower, I want to say lower income people, they're not going to find housing in our rural zone. They could buy an acre and try to build on it. They're not going to be able to afford it. What the state of Maine needs to do and what our town needs to do is figure out apartments and condos and smaller, more residential areas, stuff that's going to be, neighborhoods that are going to be pre-built where people could just buy it. People aren't looking for land. They can find plenty of land in Maine. I don't see what the difference is. Just do 2 acres versus an acre. It's such a small amount of money difference wise in the overall how much you have to spend to build a house on acreage anyway.
Well, I think you gotta.
And I also really don't agree with a lot of what the state of Maine does, so
What can I say?
not really on their side.
I think that we have to look at the fact that real estate is cyclical. It's this way now, it's gonna be the way it was, in another year or so.
I
It goes
doubt
up
that.
and down and up. Don't doubt it. I've been in it for years and it does go up. It does go up and down. And I think it will go down again. But when, I mean, we don't know, but we do know it will. And I think that, that
I
might be a
think-
give a little. I don't know.
I understand what you mean too. I'm not saying I'm not against housing. I'm just saying as an overall, taking an entire zone and having it. And then, I mean, I understand it's not going to affect every piece, every acreage in the rural area, but I'm talking developments coming in someday and what they can do to destroy your rural zone. And maybe it's not in 5 years. This could be 10 years, 15 years down the line. What we do now could make a very big difference.
Thinking more of one house and you're thinking of a lot of
Oh,
houses.
exactly. I mean, one house and all, who cares? That's great. But I'm talking development coming in someday.
Thinking about
Good.
luxury condos or
Yes.
something.
As a member of the general public, could I insert a comment here? One, there is an editorial comment. I'll direct to Dawn on this. Whatever the minimum lot size is, we do need to specify units on there, such as 40,000 or 80,000 square feet. This one didn't have units stated, so we would need to do that. Whatever they're going to be. My second comment, and yeah, these are clearly our changes, proposed changes in the ordinance. What I would prefer, if it's not too much of an imposition on the board, this and there may be several others that may require a good deal of board deliberation. If those can be identified and just tagged, because there's quite a few things in here that are sort of, readjusting and reorg that I'd like to discuss, and as opposed to be involved in a debate on a fine issue. So would that be acceptable that, for example, this table be set aside for future discussion?
Yeah,
It's a good idea.
the intent would be to have input and then, in a later discussion, we can have the debate about which way we should go and why. So
Yeah.
tonight's exercise is about getting input and giving Dawn some direction and with Ed's help, getting those things fixed for our future review. And then, at some point, we're gonna come down to making a decision on which way we wanna go. And that'll be a board decision. And I would say majority rules. So we'll have that discussion in the future. So let's go back to input. Any other input on the table? Specific items. Brent, did you have any?
Sir.
Okay, Don?
Well, I was just gonna say, we talk about an acre lot. Most people can't afford to build on it, but don't forget the middle class here and retirees. If I'm gonna locate to a town, I wanna build a house to retire in. Probably not gonna buy 2 acres. I'm gonna buy an acre and then put a nice house on it. So you got another group of people in there other than low income and the very rich, so. 1 acre might make the difference as whether they build or not.
Okay, thank you, Don. Additional item, item one, which is a sub-note, and it deals with setbacks. We've talked in the past about the definition, and we've run into this on a few occasions. It's right underneath the table. One, it's sub-note one. And if you read it, it talks about the setback relative to right-of-ways and traveled, public right-of-ways and travel portions. In other words, you could be dealing with a association road, and where's the setback? And traditionally or typically, it's been from the travel way. And a question has come up about the public way and the fact that Memorial Drive, for instance, it wanders down through the right-of-way. And where should we measure from? Is it the property line, which currently is the interpretation, or do we measure from the asphalt? And that was one thing we talked about debating and trying to come up with a solution to that issue. And I'll only mention that as for review. So are we ready to move on from that table? Okay, let's move on to 19, which has a lot of red on it.
So my understanding is that some of this language was merged, it was moved to another location, and I didn't author this.
I'll comment on that if you want. Erosion control section was actually originally, there was a section of general requirements. There was also a section in the development of shore areas, and they were pretty similar, if not identical. But what I did a year or so ago, probably more than that now, is when I was reshuffling these, I took a look at several items that were essentially the same items in two locations, and I either adjusted the language slightly to fit both situations, or if they were close enough, I mean, just deleted one and put it in general requirements, because again, this was an item that would apply generally and not specifically to shore areas. And of course, as you're looking at development in any area, you have to start with general first. You have to meet all the requirements of general, and then you look at your specific activities. You have to meet all your requirements of specific activities. And then if you're in the shoreland, then you have to move on to 14 to see if there's anything else there that applies to you. So erosion control really applies to everybody. So it should be right up front. And what I did is I just took the two, combined them into one.
Any questions on that or input?
And regarding number 4, the written soil erosion sedimentation control plan, my experience is those are generally prepared by a professional. And do we need to state that it needs to be a plan prepared by a certified professional in erosion sediment control or PE or?
State only requires that if that's shoreland. Have to be certified shoreland. That would be something extra we would want.
I'm just asking the question, I guess, at this point.
That's not necessarily a PE or a consultant. The contractors get qualified for the shoreland, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So it's not too big a deal.
But it's not something a homeowner can put together themselves, right?
Well, I don't know. Depends on their skills. I did on,
I have.
You
I
have,
think it depends
yeah.
on the homeowner.
I'm just thinking the general public comes in and someone brings in a written diagram and we say, no, that's not what we're looking for. The guy says, well, it's written like you asked for it to be written, versus giving them more direction in terms of what we're actually expecting them to provide. to us.
that happened to me. I came to the board and they had a lot of questions, what's going to happen. For work. So I took my design, I called the, I guess it was the DEP. And they sent one of their guys over. I went through with him. He made a couple suggestions, more grit in the erosion control mix. Got him to sign off on it, brought it back to the board and they were fine.
Sure.
I think it cost me. It's not putting a burden, I guess is what I'm saying, on a homeowner to go out and hire an engineering firm or anything to do that.
Right, especially if it's something that. I mean, we could look at it and be like, that's an entire mess. No, you can't. There's courses that we can take. But we did, I think me and Greg took it last year. And, did you take it too? You were there too?
Not, I took it the year before, I
okay.
think.
So we could look at it and be like that, or it's what we could say we need.
That's the course Mark just offered last week, right?
Yeah.
Mark just,
That's correct, yes.
that's the course he just offered last week.
Sweet.
It's a good course.
Very familiar with the course and the requirements. I'm just thinking from a layperson that's looking at the ordinance and saying, well, geez, what is that? And I'm just trying to think of saving us time, saving them time. Provide for further clarification on that.
Well,
that's all.
yeah, I was gonna say there's cases where you certainly may need a
Yeah.
professional or a very simple project, you may not. And I think that's where a code enforcement officer steps in when they're doing the building permit anyway, which some cases we don't even see. A lot of the stuff, we're not gonna see at the, I'm not here anymore. You're not gonna see at the board. I'm sorry, it's just 19 years automatic. But a lot of this in here, you're not gonna see at the board. These are things that are done basically with a code enforcement officer through the building permit. And that's, I think that's generally what they do. Mark is going to look at the erosion control and the scope of the project and hey, you really need to step this up. And definitely if it's coming to the board, it's usually serious enough that it needs some pretty good detail. But, as a board, you can always put that burden on them as needed.
If I may, I think it's a calculated risk. The way it's written, to the applicant, it's a calculated risk, right? They may give you minimal information. You could send them away and say, come back with more. So it may lengthen their process if they don't provide.
Yes, I was just thinking providing clarification so that there is no miscommunication. I'm good, I'm ready.
Now, as note, this is not new language. This is just shuffled around language.
So this was moved from one section to the other?
Yep.
Okay,
Right.
missed that part.
Either moved or, and or combined from the two.
Thanks,
But
Ed.
we will be seeing almost anything where they're disturbing the soil if it's over 25 yards, so.
Yeah, well, that's it. You will see a lot of it.
So anytime they're building,
Actually, I have a question. Is most of this anyway already in the state ordinance for erosion control, or is this beyond it? I don't know off the top of my head. 5A, B.
Now, a good deal of that did come from the state too.
Did, okay.
Yeah.
You all set with that portion? Yeah, that covers page 19, right?
19 and
You're dealing with just erosion. That's all erosion control anyways, right? That brings us down to page 20, is that correct? Page 19 and 20 was in that nature.
There was one item, yeah. Yeah. Next item is going to be page 26, I believe. Yep. The sanitary provision, again, here's another one that was combined from uh, from the two, sections. And, you know, I looked at the language in it. I don't recall now whether it's exact language in both, but, I did rework the language to make it appropriate, in both sections.
Any questions on page 26? What? Next page, Ed? Thirty-two?
And this, I believe, was relocated from within the shoreland zone because it applies to general areas as well. It's
Oh,
within the
Could,
shoreland zone.
could I go back just a little bit, page 27? Stormwater runoff. See, it has not changed. That language was in both places. Um, that was in 12 and also in 14. And that was the same language, so I just, when we get to 14, you'll see it's gone.
What's here?
So it's only there now. And, I was looking to see if it was marked as a change, but it wasn't because it didn't really change the language. So.
Me if I'm wrong, Ed, but on page 32, all of those changes in red and underlined are relocated. It's not new information, it's reorganized.
Yes, well, mineral exploration extraction, that wasn't relocated. That was just changed to, delete the original language and incorporate, or reference the new ordinance. But, the campgrounds was moved from, development of shore areas, individual private campsites.
Well, these are all just moved. They're still the same text.
They were all moved. Let's see. Roads and driveways was moved. Essential services was moved. And agriculture was moved also. Timber harvesting was removed, but that's repealed anyway. Wait, I'm sorry. No, we had discussion on one of these, Don? That we end up not moving, and I don't think I have the paper.
Agriculture.
It was agriculture. Yeah. And I don't know what we did with agriculture.
It's like on the table of contents, looks like we moved agriculture from 14 to 13.
Yeah, we did move it from 14 to 13. Okay, I was looking at the wrong, yeah. Agriculture was, yeah, that stayed in 13. Oh, excuse me, that was moved to 13.
As was soils and archaeological sites.
You're saying those moved as well?
They were moved.
Any input or questions on those sections?
Mr. Chairman?
All the way up to 14, which is development of shore areas?
Mr. Chairman, I could ask Ed a question. I'm second guessing archaeological sites. Was that supposed to remain in 14 or be in 13?
Archaeological sites should be in 13. That could apply anywhere. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, next page. I have 42, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. here. Yep. Well, these were, all the lines are crossed out on 42 and 43 are ones you moved.
Yeah, these are all the ones that were moved back to 13.
44 the same way. All the way through 45, right? Page 46, those are all moved. Up to the top of 47, those are all moved, is that right?
Yep. those
You
are
covered all those, right?
Right.
Okay. That was previously, L was previously repealed, right? Okay. Went on to 51, is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, just like to interject and make the observation that this is not reformatted. Some of the references to the lettering and numbering have to be changed, and the citations was a big one. So I highlighted things here on page 51 that, and that's just an example. It has to be gone through and all of those double checks if it's necessary.
We don't have work to do with citations. At all. At the point Ed was making
Yeah,
earlier.
there's some reformatting. She did quite a bit of it, but there's still some that needs to be done. Citations are going to be just a tedious process. You're gonna have to go through is, did that one move? Where is it now? That's one of those things you pick them off one by one.
Up the top of 51, those are changes relative to change in sections. Is that correct?
Potentially.
Yeah.
Double check.
Understand. It goes along with what we've already reviewed.
Yeah, that looked like it was a attempt at some of the citation updates, but it's only the tip of the iceberg.
So we're okay with 51? 52? More the same?
And these aren't change of substance either. It's just,
So next I see the bottom of 53. Is that correct? And again, this is more moving.
right, this was moved to 13.
Same way on 54. Top of 55, those are all that were moved.
Right, those would all apply generally as opposed to just the shore areas.
Next page I see is the bottom, the number is 18. Table 2? Is that right?
Organization 55, page 55 is the last suggested modification around the reorganization and those changes, the work that was done. And so there aren't any further after that. So I just printed it up to page 55. Work that you've been doing on definitions and then potential changes to this table that are outside of this item are going to be discussed separately.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but we had reviewed this before, right? Is this new, all new?
Table,
That table, we've had discussions about that
we
table.
started discussion.
Yeah, I saw that. I wasn't quite sure what that.
Any input on that table?
There's a column added to table 3, which is, I'm sorry, page 19. And Ed referenced this earlier, that those numbers need to be put in there, net residential density, number of dwelling units, per net residential acre, which I don't know where those are, if that's established, or if those numbers are being created. Do you have an answer to that, Ed?
Excuse me, the lot sizes?
The number of units per acre, per net residential acre.
Oh, I don't really remember seeing this, quite frankly.
Is this something you just added in?
It's in the ordinance, but it's not in the table.
So for reference, the table itself is what we've covered already previously. You didn't change that. But the verbiage on the bottom is additional verbiage.
So so I just want to separate out what we did up to page 55.
Yep.
If you don't go to this table, if you just stick with the table we just reviewed, that's all the work that the planning board has been doing for the last year and a half. If you want to discuss this table, I just want to be clear that pieces that I put in here for discussion are beyond work you've already done. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so. Want to make sure it doesn't hinder all of the other changes regarding this discussion.
I understand. Sorry to sound like the dummy in the room. What is net residential density?
So there's a minimum lot size.
Right,
So let's say the minimum lot size is 80,000 square feet.
okay,
And someone is going to develop more than one lot, say they're going to have several acres. The net residential area acreage is you have to take out streets in areas which are unsuitable for development, which we need to define. Like, I've not found that, maybe an oversight, but I've not found what we categorize as unsuitable for development. Usually it's wetlands, steep slopes. There's a number of resource protection district. So those would need to be identified unless it's an oversight and I've missed it. So you take your land, you take out the undevelopable land. And then you divide that by this factor, which is going to tell you how many units.
20 acres, you want to say how many actual dwellings can you have on the 20?
Especially if it's multifamily,
Wouldn't that,
attached product,
wouldn't that go back to,
could go under multifamily.
no, it would go back to, hold on, could be wrong, but. It would be considered a clustered, wouldn't it be considered if they're buying it all together?
You don't require cluster development. So if they're not clustering it, they have to have the minimum lot size
And
and
then
the
they-
frontage.
Yeah.
So if they're clustering it, how many units per net residential acre are they allowed?
To residential. They have to be on sewer and water. And then the minimum lot size right now is 20,000. We wanted to lower it to 8,000. They have to be on sewer and water. And then the road frontage was 100 feet. We want to change it to 50. And then, yeah, so that's on page 32.
I will say quite frankly, in 19 years and 2 months, I do not recall ever even seeing this term used, much less using it. So when I saw that, I kind of looked, is this something that was some term that was just created? But no, it's in the ordinance, and it's one of those things that we had not encountered. It almost sounds like something that you might see in a subdivision situation, or cluster developments, which really have not occurred in my recollection since I've been on a planning board. There's been, I think there was a few attempts at cluster development or multi-unit housing type situations, and those end up getting scuttled before they saw light of day. But I guess that's a really good question. And exactly what does that mean? I wish with my experience on the board, I could have shed some light on it, but I can't.
So I'll give an example. Ponder. So if you have this large lot and there's such a thing as house condominiums, condominium, but it's not an attached product, and they don't have to be on a lot. Be just outlined, it could be defined by the footprint of the building. You're not defining it, if you're not saying on this amount of land, you can have the units. You're not developing it as lots, because that is a common product.
Oh, like a
They just own-
or something like that, like a yurt. I don't know. I'm trying to catch on. I'm slow right now.
No, that's
Hold on.
okay. I'm trying to think of a better way to describe it. Or even two-family dwellings, if you had a piece of land and you wanted to put on 22 families. And have common area.
Commune. A hippie commune. Like it.
Well, the condominiums down on Carbocy off 202, those would be an example of what you're talking about, I would guess.
What is it?
The condominiums down before White Duck,
Yeah.
that'd be an example of what you're talking about.
Well, because based on this, it's saying you need a lot with frontage and a minimum lot size. But oftentimes, developments that come in, that's not what they're looking to develop. Maybe you don't want that type of development. I just want to be clear.
Where does this table, this is not the same table that I'm looking at in the ordinance, right?
It is. This table right here is that table, just a different font, different, added a column. It should be the same.
So are you proposing to add these references to net residential development acreage?
I pulled them out of the definition section so that we could just look at them all on one page.
Oh,
So you,
okay.
these exist in the definitions, but we're not applying them anywhere. So they could be struck, or we could find how they're used.
It as a suggestion, if it were me, I would say to take these definitions and somehow put it into the rest of the ordinance, making it a line item in our table. I think everybody else is gonna go, what the hell is net residential density? And nobody's gonna know. And they're gonna read the definition and they're still not gonna know. So if we could explain it further out and make it more relevant to what they're reading under multifamily dwelling units or under page 32 about the cluster development, maybe that would make more sense to do it that way.
Yeah, I guess that was a question of where would this apply? Because, like I say, in 19 plus years, I never saw this. That the term, I never heard the term, I never saw it used, but almost everything we were doing was single family
It's like
Um,
pretty
Right.
simple.
units
But thinking
anyway.
ahead of
but-
time, if we, developers coming in, it might not be a bad idea to incorporate that into some of these.
It's already in the ordinance. I'm not sure that I understand Jamie's.
The definition is, but it's not used anywhere.
Well,
Do
Well-
we need to use it anywhere?
I guess to put in perspective, a lot of our definitions we're developing are strictly that, and it's anticipation of future request. So that at least we've defined what it is. There's several examples on our new definitions that are not specifically outlined in the ordinance. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. Yeah. We're developing. Don, am I making sense?
Areas mostly. We've got different, or like,
The two of us, I think, are asking the same question. I'm not sure about Jane. Just saying. Previous meetings, we have attempted to define things in anticipation of requests. And is this another one of those? What Ed is saying is that we've never had this definition utilized.
you look at page 31, under clustered residential development. States that the net residential density can't be greater than that under traditional subdivision. So you have to do a calculation to take out the crap land, basically.
I'm sorry, Don, one more time. What specifically are you reading?
Under F, on page 31, clustered residential development.
Yep.
So under traditional, I will assume that it would be the minimum size that to create a lot. But to me, it's in conflict because minimum lot size here says 8,000 square feet, and that's in any zone that you allow a single family. But under traditional development, it's going to be a different number because it's going to be the minimum lot size in the table. Like, they made that more clear or more confusing?
Well, what I'd suggest is we take the questions we have and try to come up with a better way to define it and explain it. And
Yeah, let me come up with some
Agreed.
examples.
I think that's fair.
Some visuals probably would be helpful.
Any other input on that subject?
I think this might open up a whole can of worms about redoing our cluster development, which is not a bad idea anyway, in anticipation of future things happening. Not to make everything more complicated than it already is, but make it more complicated. Yes.
Have we finished the review in front of us? Ed, Don, we've gone through
I
everything?
think we've covered everything I was involved with.
Okay, Don?
There's more that we touched on at a previous meeting, but I believe we should conclude with what we've discussed with Ed tonight so that all can be moved forward.
Okay.
Aside from the one piece that got set aside.
That's how this process works, right? We build this process. Question I have, we got written input from Greg and everybody has a copy in front of you. Are you going to take that as input? Do we need to cover it all?
May want to review that together.
Okay, so everybody have the document?
Hold on, I'm searching.
It looks like this.
Got it.
There's one over here if you.
Everybody got one? Okay, so I'm going down to 2023 zoning ordinance. You got one, Ed?
I guess I do.
Goes now.
Okay, table one. Excuse me, item one, table 3. Do we want to remove with sewer? He says, with our proposed changes, we would be increasing the size of general residence from 30,000 to 40,000. I would propose we keep with sewer and decrease the lot size to 20,000. I realize at this time the town is not proposing new sewer system, but it could happen in the future. Any other input on that subject?
Move
Yeah.
with sewer.
You try-
Some
Sewer,
extent
and
that
increase the
comes
lot
into
size
your
to
debate on the minimum lot sizes anyway.
Exactly.
Thing.
I see what he's saying. So he's saying table 3, not on the extra page that we print, that she had printed, but this page, it gets rid of. The whole suggestion is to remove that. He's saying we should keep that. Because we can lower general residential to 20,000. People can build more in general residential, which makes, I would think, more sense. But without sewer, they have to have a septic, so you have to at least have 1 acre. That would have to be 40. Otherwise, we're making everything 40.
Okay, so let's include, I think we all understand it. And so let's take that into consideration with our discussion in the future.
Yeah.
You explained it well, so
Okay.
appreciate it. Okay, I'm now, item 2, section 13D. 2C. Do we want to change this 10,000 to something small like 2,000? You got a picture yet?
I was gonna say.
At 37? He's talking about section 13.
Specific
28.
multi-family dwelling unit.
13D.
So
30,
back to 28, he's looking for D2,
page 30.
page 30? Yep, okay. D2C.
Or something.
For multifamily buildings exist prior to June 4th, 1981, located in the village zoning district with access to public water and sewer, the minimum lots shall be 10,000. First unit, 1,500 square feet for each additional unit, provided that there are no expansion on existing structure. And he is proposing that something smaller to 2,000.
Mr. Chairman. So Greg came by this morning.
Yep.
And he talked about some of this. And one of the things I talked to him about was that I was going to try to find examples of existing structures, how this, when this was created, how it impacted existing structures in the village. So as part of that, if you need additional information, I'm going to try to ferret some of that out.
Any questions or input on that item that Greg talked? Okay, I have covered Greg's notes, I believe. I think we have completed. Ed, Don, correct me, but I think we have completed other business. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Definitions? Are we doing definitions, Don?
Definitions, I think we should wait until
Future
next
meeting,
time.
another workshop?
Because what we're talking about, it doesn't affect it except for the one that's going to be added.
Yep.
Which is the shore area.
Are we okay with that? We'll do definition in the next meeting. We have completed everything under 5. Is that correct?
Then what about the build out analysis? Are we taking this home for thought to discuss it another time?
That was the next item. Too.
Okay.
Don, you want to talk about that?
I apologize for a moment. Just look, you're talking about under workshop, item 5. So continued discussion for May 22nd, which I suggest that we'll talk about next meeting where the table of land uses that were above and beyond what was for reorganization and changes that the board was working on. Table three-dimensional requirements, which would have been that added column. And then the definition. So I think those pieces can move to a future discussion.
For the next meeting.
So I think that in that instance, these would be addressed. And I heard site plan
Site plan.
was on the radar. They're on my radar, my radar.
Want to talk quickly about this?
Yes, please.
Now on to the build-out analysis.
The document that's going around now is just an overview of what a build-out analysis is. Yep, not everyone has it.
Poor Betty's been looking at it. Was like, it looks like this.
So it's taking a look at the current zoning and the current conditions in the town, land that you have, resources, areas that should be protected, areas that are already developed, and the current zoning. So the town's talking about, and the plans for quite a long time, going back to, your 2010 plan, your 2000 plan, has talked about density in different areas and if it should change, and advocating for it, say in the village. What does that look like? So a build-out analysis says, under today's ordinance, this is the maximum. This is what it looks like if it's built out to capacity under your ordinance. And if you change it, here's what it would look like. So that you use that as a tool to inform you when you make changes regarding density, even things like parking and setbacks, changes the intensity of the land. If you have greater parking requirements, then it's going to be more impervious area, more land that's developed. So there's a number of different components that you look at, but it is a tool that informs you to make other types of changes in the ordinance, which we don't have this currently. I have not created one before, but I think that I would like to take that venture on. And my suggestion or my request is if there's folks who are able to participate in a subcommittee, I don't want to spread myself so thin that nothing gets done well. So if there are folks who are able to, and you all want to contemplate creating a subcommittee, I would like to attack that.
I love this idea. This is what I'm because obviously you've heard me, very concerned about development and doing it correctly and doing it in a responsible way. And I think this takes the guesswork out of us knowing if we're making the right decisions. I think this is a great idea. I would be on this subcommittee. Decided to.
Not asking for a decision tonight. I just wanted to start the.
The intent is for us to take this away, read it, understand it, digest it, and then at a future meeting in the next month or so, we would talk about a subcommittee and going forward with it.
You may look at it and say, we don't think this is necessary, and I'm not.
That's allowed.
So.
But it's also, it's not a rush. I don't think it's a rush,
Well,
right?
may-
6 months? More than that?
Well, no, in terms of,
Right, hold on.
there are so many things that we'd like to have in place now, right? Because they're going to protect the character of the town.
Right.
Work towards the goal of the comprehensive plan. So you don't want to put regulations in place that haven't been well thought through, and there's the whole unintended consequences. But we'd like to consider some changes. When I say we, the town, you need the tools to do that. So sooner is better to do it.
Could we, within the next 2 meetings, put that back on the agenda and talk about path forward?
Oh, here you go. Source.
Yeah, yes, I know.
I mean, this makes it out to be fairly simple, and I don't suspect that it'll be as simple as this is couched.
No.
But I think even a rudimentary build-out analysis would be helpful.
I'm sure we have plenty of straw persons out there to look at and use.
Plenty of what, I'm sorry?
You didn't know that word, did you?
Straw man, I've heard the term straw man.
Straw person.
Oh, person, oh.
Oh, my point was, I'm sure there's examples out there that we could utilize, not reinvent the wheel.
Yes.
Okay, any other business?
Another,
I have some business.
uh-oh.
No, actually, I'm going to leave shortly. I think we've covered pretty much everything I was involved in. Other than real quick, and I know there was a little discussion on the lot size setback issues and so forth, but barring that, everything we did here, did that make sense?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So, you know, if you had, you know, if there was some question hanging out there, I mean, it's a good chance to hit it now, because like I say, I had kind of historically worked on this, and some of you folks weren't even on the board when we started this, so it's, you know, somewhat a lot of history behind that, but, you know, so if there were any outstanding questions other than, you know, discussion of, you know, do we want to change the setback, so forth, I'll let you guys do that, that's yours. But, if not, you know, I'll, then adjourn on that. I did have one comment on meeting minutes. I did go online, I availed myself of the minutes of the final meeting that I was here. And interestingly, in the meeting minutes, they discussed that one previous meeting minutes had to be corrected to correct the spelling of Mr. Stewart's name. However, my name is still spelled incorrectly in those minutes.
And we'll fix that, right?
I know.
That it?
Just for the record, there is an E in the very middle of my last name. Nobody seems to be able to get that one, but anyway,
Try pronouncing it.
what's that?
Try pronouncing it.
Pronounce it,
With that
yeah,
extra E in there.
I've had that butchered so many ways. Well, the spelling's been butchered too. I just thought it humorous that, oh, they misspelled Greg's name. Meanwhile, my name was misspelled about 8
Like,
times.
we
in
looked at it, like, you don't know, that seems right.
At least it was consistent, though, I will say that. But, any case, if you guys are all set, I think I'm going to head back and catch a
Not yet,
basketball game.
not yet. So I want to take a minute. Jim, you still on?
Yeah,
Okay. Wanted to recognize Ed for his efforts with all that we covered tonight. And I also want to recognize his 19-plus years on the board and his dedication to Winthrop and the planning process. And just want to make sure you understand, we really appreciated that dedication and commitment.
All right.
Thank you very much, Ed, for all.
All right, let's check this out here.
And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Look at that. Yep.
All in favor?
yeah. Yeah,
Unanimous.
Jim, I'm sorry, did you say something?
She'll turn off.
no,
Okay,
I
thank you.
just said yes.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Thank you,
You
Jim.
bet,
We are
thank you.
adjourned.